In Southwark, a 17-year-old boy's life was snatched away. It wasn't just any boy, this was Incognito, a drill rapper who had made a name for himself. Shot dead in Camberwell, the same street where his close friend had been gunned down just a month earlier. And in his final moments, his words echoed.
You through them windows now, where's the Russians, fam?
I don't know, whatever comes my way, innit?
Southwark is no stranger to violence, it's got a reputation. It's one of the most dangerous boroughs in London, ranking in the top 10 with a staggering 116 crimes per 1,000 people in 2023. That's well above the citywide average of 105 crimes per 1,000. With over 315,000 people living in Southwark, many are just trying to survive the dangers of their environment, not fully aware of the intense gang war that's been simmering in the streets. Peckham, home to the notorious ZONE2 gang, and Walworth, where gangs like Moscow 17, B17 and AY17 reign, are at the heart of this battle. These gangs are deeply intertwined, their beef with ZONE2 so fierce it's left a trail of bodies and bloodshed. These aren't just street names, they're war zones, where dangerous stabbings and shootings happen right under the noses of unsuspecting residents. So how did it all go down? How did kids from these areas, some of them still teenagers, end up in these deadly rivalries? It all started with a few key players. ZONE2, formed from the remnants of the Peckham Kids gang, started out as 365 Dank Boys back in 2014. By that time, they'd linked up with YPB, or Younger Peckham Boys, a crew that would soon get major recognition, especially with rap artists like Golly repping them. The older, more established Peckham Boys gang was already known, with rapper gigs having ties to them. These connections would play a huge role in ZONE2's rise in the UK drill scene. As ZONE2 members began rapping about their gang affiliations, they gained more and more attention, but things weren't all smooth sailing. The Hit Squad, a sub-gang that housed the most notorious members of ZONE2, like PS, only added fuel to the fire. The era between 2014 and 2015 saw ZONE2's biggest names, Quangface, Preacher Had and Trizak, taking over the drill scene, but by recent years the ZONE2 gang had essentially faded away, with younger, more aggressive offshoots taking the spotlight. Before it fell out of relevance, ZONE2 had a tight-knit bond with Moscow 17, a rival gang based in the Brandon estate in Walworth. The connection was so strong that Trizak and Incognito were cousins, and members from ZONE2 even appeared in Moscow 17's music videos. But that bond would soon shatter, leading to one of the deadliest gang rivalries in London's history. It started small, an alleged robbery by PS from ZONE2 targeting the cousin of Loose Screw from Moscow 17. That little theft would set off a chain of events that would snowball into violence. A confrontation between PS and Loose Screw led to a fight, but it was nothing compared to what was about to unfold. Tizzy T, a member of Moscow 17, stepped in to mediate. He tried to calm things down, but just days later, he was stabbed by a ZONE2 member in a brutal attack. Though he was pronounced dead at the scene, paramedics managed to revive him, but the damage was done. Tizzy T's near-death experience marked the beginning of the end for Moscow 17 and ZONE2's fragile peace. On June 6, 2016, Rizzy Rams, a 15-year-old member of Moscow 17, was with his family at a fun fair in Burgess Park, a park that separated ZONE2's territory from Moscow's. That's when two ZONE2 members saw him, chased him down, and stabbed him repeatedly in front of shocked families. His organs were exposed after the attack, and an air ambulance had to rush him to safety. Miraculously, Rizzy Rams survived one of the most brutal attacks you could imagine. This moment was a turning point. The streets would never be the same. Families, friends, and entire communities would forever be caught in the crossfire of a war fueled by violence, betrayal, and revenge. This was just one chapter in a deadly ongoing cycle that claimed lives, tore apart friendships, and escalated far beyond what anyone could have imagined. And in the middle of it all, a young boy, a rapper named Incognito, would fall victim to this gang war, the same way his friend had just months earlier. Less than a month later, on the 1st of July 2016, Knockout Ned, a member of Moscow 17, found himself in a McDonald's in Camberwell at around midnight. A ZONE2 member spotted him, and within moments Ned was stabbed in the neck. Police rushed to the scene, but by then Knockout Ned had already been attacked. The good news was that he managed to survive the attack. That stabbing would go down in history, often referenced in ZONE2's drill tracks, including the disrespectful track No Censor, where Unruly Bad rapped, "Ned just wanted a cheeseburger. Max, what you do that for? Knockout's juice gets spilled on the floor. Ha, you just started a war." This line makes it clear ZONE2 knew exactly what was coming next. A war. And with that, the tension between the two gangs was about to reach new heights. By the end of 2016, Moscow 17 members Screw Loose and GB dropped a track titled Violence. It didn't blow up, but it got noticed, around 330,000 views. More importantly, it showed the raw talent of GB. Moscow 17 also released Moscow March on December 28th, 2016, Loose, Screw and GB, who was starting to make a real impact. Sadly, GB's life would be cut short in 2018. When 2017 rolled around, the violence only intensified. A member of Moscow 17 allegedly spotted a ZONE2 member named Frejo. The result? Frejo was stabbed about 14 times. He was rushed to the hospital and survived, but the incident didn't end there. There were whispers that Frejo was kicked out of ZONE2 after that. During this time, Harlem Spartans started to get involved, aligning themselves with Moscow 17, B17 and AY17. The alliances grew stronger and the tensions ran even higher. But things really took a dark turn when Moscow 17 and Harlem Spartans went on a ride out. When Lats from Harlem Spartans was stabbed during this ride out, the relationship between Harlem and Moscow soured. Although both gangs tried to patch things up, tensions remained simmering between certain members. After Frejo's stabbing, ZONE2 members Trezak, Quangface and Peace dropped No Hook, a drill anthem that earned 1.8 million views. But before they could release Sticks and Stones, the war escalated even further, with more deaths haunting both gangs. On the 5th of June 2017, Incognito and Jet Black, both members of Moscow 17, were riding bikes around Peckham. They were allegedly looking for a ZONE2 member named Six. Instead, they ran into Abs, who wasn't actually part of ZONE2, but was friends with some of them. He was also cousins with Six. None of that mattered to Incognito and Jet Black. They attacked Abs. They chased him down and stabbed him in the heart. Abs collapsed outside a Tesco's in Peckham, and despite the brutal attack, he was pronounced dead shortly after. In the aftermath, Abs' older brother, Abs, allegedly turned informant, a move that led to both Incognito and Jet Black's arrest. But as with so many cases in the streets, justice wasn't so simple. By 2018, the case fell apart in court due to a lack of evidence, and both Incognito and Jet Black walked free. Rest in peace, Abs. Around the same time, Quangface and his mum were caught up in a shooting. A member of the Harlem Spartans spotted them, took shots at Quangface, forcing him to leave his mum behind and flee for his life. Harlem Spartans even referenced this incident in the track Youngest and Baddest, released in early 2018. The lyric went, "ZONE2 pics, where I slapped it. Quangface dashed and his mum nearly had it. Oh shit, that would have been tragic." GB, a drill rapper from Moscow 17, was sent to Jamaica by his mum in 2017. She feared for his safety, but GB returned to the UK in 2018. His decision to come back would ultimately cost him his life. In April 2018, ZONE2 members started circling rival blocks in Walworth, capturing everything on camera. They drove through the Brandon estate, putting pressure on random people, questioning whether they were Russians, a reference to Moscow 17's name. The tension reached its boiling point when ZONE2 members spotted GB in Walworth. On the 5th of May 2018, 4 ZONE2 members rode through Brandon estate in a car. When they saw GB with other Moscow 17 members, they fired 2 shots out of the window. GB took 2 bullets in the chest, dying in the arms of Incognito, one of his closest friends. It was a tragic scene. GB was pronounced dead at the scene. The investigation went nowhere. 6 years later, the murder remains unsolved. 5 years later, on the anniversary of GB's death, Crime Stoppers offered a £20,000 reward for information. Rest in peace, GB. To make matters worse, a comment left by GB on an old music video was discovered. He had written, "Preacher and Rids going in as usual." It's a painful reminder that these men used to be friends, but in the world they lived in, they ended up enemies. It just shows how pointless this gang life is, how it destroys not just the lives of those involved, but the lives of everyone around them. The shooting that night was aimed at Incognito, who was clearly the target, but ZONE2 members had other plans. The tragic death of GB grabbed headlines everywhere. It was everywhere in the media. Everyone was talking about it. The Met Police responded by taking down Moscow 17's music videos, including the massive track Moscow March, which had hit around 1 million views by then. 2 weeks after GB's death, Incognito, the man who had been with GB during his final moments, dropped a heartfelt tribute track titled Bloodshed. The song opened with a picture of GB, and the message read, "In loving memory of GB, sadly gone but never forgotten. Look over your loved ones and protect us all. Love you, family." But just 2 months after GB's death, things got even worse. Harlem Spartans member Lats went out with a Moscow 17 member, but the ride out went terribly wrong. Lats was stabbed and left to die by the Moscow member he was with, and this only made tensions worse between Moscow 17 and Harlem Spartans. Both sides took to Snapchat, throwing jabs at each other, though today it seems both gangs are on neutral ground, with certain members still beefing others. A week later, on the 1st of August 2018, tragedy struck again when Incognito was murdered on the same street where GB had been killed just months earlier. He was chilling on the Brandon estate with a younger member of Moscow 17 when they spotted a man with a Rolex. They went up to rob him, but the man fought back, pulling out a lock knife and chasing after Incognito, who wasn't armed. He stabbed Incognito twice in the neck. The younger Moscow 17 member retaliated, stabbing the man, but it was too late. Incognito was pronounced dead on the scene, and the man who killed him was arrested shortly after. In 2019, the case was ruled as self-defense, and the charges were dropped. Rest in peace, Incognito. The loss of both GB and Incognito hit Moscow 17 hard. ZONE2 members didn't waste any time dissing both of them, rapping about their deaths in tracks. Moscow 17 began to fall out of relevance, and their presence in the drill scene started to fade, but ZONE2 had a new wave of talent rising. Quangface blew up, going viral with tracks like Three Stripes and his Fire in the Booth. These songs reached millions of views and brought him a solid fan base. At the beginning of 2019, Gully, a member of YPP, Younger Peckham Boys, affiliated with ZONE2, released his debut track Movies, which made waves in the drill scene. Karma, another ZONE2 member, also started gaining massive attention, dropping multiple tracks that racked up hundreds of thousands of views. However, not long after, in May 2019, tragedy struck again. Junior, a friend of GB's, was killed just 5 months after attending GB's vigil. Junior wasn't a gang member, but he was affiliated with AY17, a gang closely aligned with Moscow 17. Junior was well known and loved around the Aylesbury estate and was focused on his education, but because of his association, he couldn't escape the violence. On the 5th of May, 1 year after GB's death, Junior was leaving GB's vigil when a member of YPP, Suspect, spotted him. Junior ran, but Suspect caught up, stabbing him multiple times in the leg. The knife cut an artery and Junior was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead hours later. Suspect fled London but was arrested days later. After a lengthy trial, Suspect was convicted and sentenced to life with a minimum of 16 years. Rest in peace, Junior. Just 3 days after Junior's death, AY17 dropped a track called Aylesbury Boy. The song went viral, especially on TikTok, with Jay Wavy rapping, "He got shot on his birthday, how's that for a birthday gift?" The music video even showed a member walking out with a birthday cake. These lyrics were about a ZONE2 member, allegedly TB, being shot while celebrating his birthday by a member of AY17. Moscow 17's music scene was quiet in 2019, with only Loose releasing a few songs. Meanwhile, PS from ZONE2, also part of Hit Squad, spent a few months in Edmonton after being banned from Peckham. He wasn't idle though, he still had issues with the Edmonton-based gang 3x3. In 2019, E1 caught PS slipping and the whole thing was caught on camera. PS ran, but E1 and ZT chased him. This moment would later be immortalised in a track where PS was dissed. Days after, 3x3 members showed up at PS's mum's house, kicking in the door while she was inside. They taunted him, mocking his name. ZONE2 responded with a shooting in Edmonton, though fortunately no one was hurt. It was wrapped up in a disrespectful track, No Censor, where Quangface rapped, "PS just shot up the 9, now man's doing up cheeky snaps." E1 responded with, "Apparently you shot up the 9, PS tell me who you slapped. You weren't doing up cheeky snaps when you bucked me in Zeds. You was doing up dash panic heart attack when you saw the GMs outside of your mums." The drill scene continued to boil over in 2019, with retaliation and disses keeping the streets lit and violent, the tension showing no signs of letting up. In July 2019, ZONE2's LR dropped his Lightwork freestyle, a track so fire that it racked up 1.2 million views, solidifying ZONE2's place in the drill scene. But that was just the beginning. ZONE2 had something even bigger lined up for the end of the year. A few months after LR's track, tragedy struck again. An alleged Moscow 17 affiliate, Lil CJ, was murdered by members of rival CMB. Although Lil CJ wasn't actually part of Moscow 17, he lived in Camberwell, the same area where Moscow 17 was based, and was close to some of their members. On October 10, 2019, Lil CJ was visiting friends on the Brandon estate. Around 7:30 PM, he decided to head home. That's when he was spotted by 6 members of CMB. They were looking for trouble and found it when they saw CJ. He took off running, even trying to climb a tree to escape, but it was no use. The attackers dragged him down and stabbed him multiple times, leaving him dead on the spot. The police arrested all of them, but in the end only 2 would be convicted and handed life sentences for the murder. Rest in peace, Lil CJ. Although Lil CJ wasn't involved in the gang lifestyle, his affiliation with certain people was enough to put a target on his back. Despite not being a member, ZONE2 would frequently diss Lil CJ in their songs. Around the same time, ZONE2 and Moscow 17 were both killing it musically, but at the end of 2019, ZONE2 dropped a track that would make waves, No Censor. This track would spark controversy and end up in the headlines. On December 8, 2019, ZONE2 members Unruly Bad, Karma, Trizak, B Gotti, LR and Quengface released No Censor, and as the title suggests, there was no holding back. The track opened with Unruly Bad referencing the 2016 McDonald's stabbing of Knockout Ned. Then Karma came through with a disrespectful verse mentioning the names of dead rivals, followed by the line, "Put in a spliff." To add insult to injury, a sonic coin sound effect was used, symbolising that a point had been scored. ZONE2 was one of the first to use this coin effect, which has since become a common feature in drill music. No Censor was pure disrespect and self-snitching wrapped into one, and within 5 hours of its release, YouTube took it down. Still, re-uploads of the track floated around. The next day, on December 4th, BBC picked up the story with the headline, "Drill video naming murdered victims banned by YouTube." As if that wasn't enough, in early 2020, members of Harlem Oys and Moscow 17 dropped a response track called He's Dead. J Mash rapped, "Got put in a pack, he's dead," disrespecting rival members. The song went viral on TikTok, used by countless people in edits. Rest in peace to everyone involved. Throughout 2019, there were countless tit-for-tat incidents between ZONE2 and Moscow 17, many of them never even making the news. They just kept getting rapped about in tracks. But it was clear the beef between these two was far from over. By 2021, Moscow 17 tried to make a comeback in the UK drill scene, but struggled to maintain consistency. ZONE2 had a strong run in 2020, but by 2021 many of its members started stepping away from the streets or quitting rap altogether. By 2022, it seemed like Quengface was the only one still making music for ZONE2. Since 2020, things between ZONE2 and Moscow 17 have cooled down, with some even speculating that ZONE2 might have dissolved entirely. It no longer seems to be the gang it once was. So if there's anything you take from this, let it be this: the streets are a dead end, they lead to nothing but jail or death. Nothing positive ever comes from it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let's hit 5k by the end of the year.